President Muhammadu Buhari has inaugurated a $73 million infrastructure intervention project to drive development and accelerate the growth of the sugar subsector. The goal of the intervention was to support the development of irrigation infrastructure on 10,000 hectares of sugar plantations in Nigeria, which is in line with the federal government's determination to diversify the base of the economy through the formulation of favorable policies, provisions of technical support, creation of a business-friendly environment. Joining us from our Abuja studios is Arise business analyst Chika Onbono to discuss further. Chika, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to ask you, starting with the budget, Chika, what you make of the increase from 16.3 trillion to 17.1.
Rotus, good morning. Before I talk about that, I just want to commend again the two houses that. Consistent with what has happened in the last few years, that we've now succeeded in passing the budget of the succeeding year before the end of the preceding year, which wasn't like that in the past, and it used to cause a lot of confusion. Even though the 2021 budget also has been extended for implementation by 90 days. The House of Reps justified the increase, about the 800 billion naira increase, that there were some items that were not properly covered in the budget, and it became necessary to address them and cover them. And this increase, of course, led to an increase in the original deficit in the budget by about 98 billion. And on top of the 6.25 trillion that was there before. So yes, the House has the authority, understand, to look at the line items and then adjust them based on the understanding of the realities in the country, and that's what they have done.
Thank you so much for that, Shuka. So does this mean we should expect more borrowing in 2022 if that increase in size was, as it is, leads to an increased deficit?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the deficit before this increase was about 6.25 trillion, and then they dumped additional 98 billion on the deficit. So, do recall also before now, the 6.25 trillion was going to be financed by local and domestic and foreign borrowings, and other drawdowns from other special loan projects, and then proceeds. I hear that every budget season, proceeds from privatization, which we normally don't see. They seem to like that phrase, and they add it every time, yet really almost little or nothing comes from that line. Yeah, of course, they were already going to borrow, to support the budget because of the deficit. And the increase has led to about 100 billion naira increase in the deficit. So the borrowing continues.
What is the, I guess, and you've talked about this several times, what's the impact of yet more borrowing for Nigeria in fiscal year 2022 and beyond?
I mean, there are the fundamental issues about the budget. There are fundamental issues about the budget, and would seem to go through this every budget cycle, and nothing seems to be done about them. The budget rests solidly on the fortunes in oil. 1.8 million barrels of oil per day. The average price of oil used in the budget will move from $57 per barrel to, I think, $62 per barrel. Now, if you consider the fact that we've been struggling to meet our quota of 1.55 million barrels a day, now it tells you, therefore, again, what will happen to the budget, considering that the budget is predicated on the 1.8 million barrels a day. And so the revenue base of the budget is driven from oil. And oil has its limitations. It can always be this number of barrels times this number of oil price. It cannot be more than that. OPEC controls the quantity, the market controls the price. As COVID oscillates from alpha to omega to beta to omicron to the price of oil also just oscillates too. And then when we were comfortable, happy, rejoicing that oil price was resting at $80 per barrel, now you see what Omicron has cost. The latest wave of COVID has cost the price to crater. So it's something. The diversification of our economy, nothing has been achieved. It's still, the movement like still a needle. Largely everything comes from oil. Non-oil export contribution to our revenues is almost, very paltry, as it has always historically been. So as we struggle with oil production, oil price, revenue has a limit. We must borrow to compensate for the balance. Because as you already know, one thing I found difficult to do in Nigeria is that even the revenues we are projected will achieve 50%, but the expense will achieve about 110, 120%. And so the deficit is even larger. If you look at the budget again, the elements, you'll find that about more than 6 trillion are non-capital expenditure expenses. And out of that, about 4 trillion is personnel costs. It tells you again, looking at the body language of our president, it tells you again that that you can't shave out a cover from the budget. So we're going to continue to borrow, and that's what's going to happen.
Minute or two on the sugar, the latest sugar intervention, $73 million from the presidency. What do you think?
We spent a lot of time talking about sugar on this program. Indeed, at the time, we spoke about it for almost about 2 or 3 weeks. Sugar, the National Sugar Master Plan, from my assessment, is a failure. Because all the milestones that set out to be achieved, none has been achieved. Indeed, I read a report that said that we were producing more in 1990 locally than we're producing in 2020. That tells you we have been going backwards. Don't wonder, therefore, that almost more than 1.6 trillion metric tons of sugar we're importing. To summarize it, the key 3 sugar producers, to allow them import raw sugar to process in the sugar refineries, agreed on the backward integration plan, which is basically to go and plant sugar plantations, harvest raw sugar canes, and then process them instead of the foreign exchange you are spending in importing raw sugar from overseas. That's the summary of that. But there have been claims and counterclaims as to what each of the 3 principal companies involved have done. And the Sugar Council, National Sugar Council, I won't clap for them, has not been very diligent, into my assessment, in making sure that these people keep to the commitments they have made in allowing them to import raw sugar for refining in Nigeria.
All right.
So this $73 million will help in that process.
Arise business analyst Chika Mbono. Chika, thank you so much for taking us through the headlines. We appreciate your time. You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News. We'll be